Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Buenos dias, damas y caballeros. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sung-Hoon Kim, and I'll be your MC for this event. I'd like to welcome all of you to the International Civil Aviation Organization's 40th Assembly SkyTalks. And over a course of a 2-week period, we have 68 presentations for you from aviation industry experts. And I would welcome you to come into the ICAO SkyTalks site on YouTube and check out the full list of SkyTalks that we have ready for you. Our next presenter, George Paltakis, is officer in the Partnership and Resource Mobilization. He will tell you a little bit more about ICAO's Resource Mobilization of Voluntary Funds 101. Please welcome George.
Thank you very much, Sang. Much appreciated. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for joining us for this Sky Talk. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about what is resource mobilization and how we undertake it here in ICAO and how we can work together so we can make things better. So resource mobilization is basically the process to achieve adequate and more predictable, sustainable voluntary contributions so that we can realize what the organization does, the mission of the organization. The term comes from a sociological theory from back in the 1970s, actually. But basically what you need to remember is that resource mobilization is how we can get more money for sustainable aviation. First of all, what we do not mobilize resources for. We do not mobilize resources for some things that I'm going to explain. But before I do this, we're going to need to take it back a little bit and do a little bit of a one-on-one on budget. I know it's not the most welcome thing for people, finance and budget, but here it is. So the ICAO regular program budget for 2017 to 19 basically is about $300 million in total, Canadian. This covers the implementation of all the programs in each of the 5 ICAO strategic objectives. ICAO receives these funds via assessments, mainly, and also via a couple of funds, the AOSC fund and the ARGF fund. What you need to remember is that assessments, in essence, cover most of SARP's development. So we do not mobilize resources for the regular program budget. What we do mobilize resources for is what we call extra budgetary programs. And these are programs that are related across the board, cross-cutting programs to all the 5 ICAO strategic objectives. And these are not covered by the 300 million that I just mentioned before that is contained in the regular budget. Now, ICAO needs, as you can understand, to mobilize voluntary funds for these extra budgetary programs. And what do these contain? They basically contain 3 things: training and capacity building, technical assistance, and technical cooperation. So we need money for these extra budgetary programs in order to help states fully implement the SARPs. ICAO has a number of funding modalities in order to provide funding for these voluntary funds. We have SAFE, the AFSEC fund, the Environment Fund, the Air Transport Fund, the newly created Resource Mobilization Fund, the AFI Plan Fund, the AFI CEFCAL Fund, and then the IPAV Fund and the Edward Warner Award Fund. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, and we're working right now in order to ensure that we can create a holistic and streamlined approach on how these funds are managed and how they're reported upon. How do we do currently resource mobilization? There was a policy that was passed in 2016, and via this policy, our council approved the ICAO Resource Mobilization Policy. ICAO also established an office, which is the SPCP. Most of you probably don't know what SPCP stands for. It's a mystery for many of us here still, because we cannot come up with the acronym, but it actually stands for Strategic Planning and Coordination of Partnerships. Within SPCP, we have already also established a smaller section in which there's a two-people show, basically. I belong in this section and my supervisor, and this is the PRM section, which is the Partnerships and Resource Mobilization section. And so this was established along with the Project Review Committee in order to prioritize projects and mobilize voluntary funding. What have we done over the past couple of years? We have been overseeing, of course, the PRC, the Project Review Committee, but also we realized that in order to mobilize resources, there is one main thing that the partners request from us. Can anybody guess from the audience what would that be? Nobody? Maja? No, okay. So we don't have volunteers from the audience. And by the way, if you would like to interrupt me at any point in time with questions, please don't hesitate to do so. Since we don't have any volunteers from the audience right now, the one thing that donors and partners need is trust. How do you build trust? In order to build trust, the donors want to make sure that whatever resources they put towards they bring to ICAO, whether it be monetary or experts, they would be used appropriately and they would also deliver results. So the first step that we decided to take in order to achieve this was to start building structures. So we are in the process of launching a couple of structures. One of them is the Resource Mobilization platform, and then we have another structure which is the Resource Mobilization Network. Both of them are in the last stages of testing them, and we should be rolling out the platform by the fourth quarter now in 2019. And the Resource Mobilization Network is already in operation, but it should be fully launched by the first quarter of 2020. So in essence, we have built the structures for enhanced resource mobilization. On the coordination, which is the Resource Mobilization Network, on the coordination front, what is this? The Resource Mobilization Network has its purpose to strengthen the capacity of resource mobilization within ICAO and assist the organization to mobilize resources. So we have different focal points in the bureaus and also in the regional offices. As you can see, all the regional offices in the map here. If you take the names here, there's a simple table that shows you the names. We have Marco, we have David, we have Thomas, we have Sarantis, we have Muna, we have Julio, we have Veronica, we have myself, George, we have Daniel, and we have Jorge from the various bureaus and regional offices. These are your local resource mobilization focal points, your go-to people. If you have any questions to ask about how to mobilize resources, you go to these people. And now let's go to a tool that we have for resource mobilization, the platform. And this is meant basically, in order to build trust, you need to increase your transparency and also streamline your efforts. We're trying to make that platform the one-stop shop for all the joint resource mobilization efforts that we're undertaking. and it's intended to be used by a number of audiences. In the launch that we're going to have in the fourth quarter of 2019 now, we mean it to be accessed by all Secretariat staff, and also this will be with role-based levels of functionality and trust. And also later on, in the first quarter of 2020, we will have also Council and Member States accessing. At first it will be Council, the Council states, and then also Member States, most probably, potentially later on in the year. So also you, if you're part of the audience right now. So moving forward, this is a view of how this looks right now. Nice picture in the middle. On the left, there is the all of the folders, all of the options that you have and we're going to go through a couple of these just to explore. The first one is our product, if you would. What are we trying to mobilize resources for? So you see there are a couple of products or projects here, or programs, and we have how much money we're requesting for these. We have a provision also to add what kind of in-kind resources, experts, are needed. Then we have how much money we have already mobilized, and then what is our funding gap for this program or project. In this slide, we can see that there's another thing that is interesting for resource mobilization, and this is which donors have given how much money and for what purpose. So you see here, we have how much money has been pledged and how much money has been received. Here we're getting a little bit more on the intelligence and on how this platform will help coordinate our efforts. Here we can see that which donor is interested in what project, also what country, potentially what regional office, and we're exploring what area or theme of work. So all this information is fully accessible to everybody, will be fully accessible as soon as we launch to everybody in the Secretariat, and also the member states as soon as we have the second part of the launch. This will obviously coordinate efforts. If we have an interest by a state in a specific project, and an officer is going to visit that state at the technical or at the political level, it is a very good idea to have this kind of information at hand so that the engagement with that partner can be informed better. We're going one step further here to improve coordination, and we include all the meetings, the high-level at least meetings that we have had with partners. Who did we meet, why did we meet them, and what did we talk about during the meeting? And again, this is all accessible to all of the staff in the Secretariat. And one more thing in order to increase trust with donors is we have to show results. What did we do with the funding or with the in-kind resources that we received? Here we see a couple of examples of reports that were produced using after the completion of the activities. There are some things that are down the pipeline. Among them, we have SOPs, standard operating procedures, because we would like to describe to you how we're doing this work and what are the steps involved, what are the accountabilities, so that we can make sure that we communicate better and we approach the potential partners and funders for our projects and programs in the optimal way. We have a partnership platform coming up also that will help by showing us what partnerships we have available and what agreements we have already established with partners. And we will also organize resource mobilization webinars, brown bag lunches, and other engagements one-on-one. Now, let's see how this works in practice. You can put yourself, if you are ICAO staff and you're trying to mobilize resources, you can put yourself in Alice's shoes here. Because we really think that resource mobilization is not about some wise women or men that are sitting up there on a pedestal and they have no connection to reality. We believe that resource mobilization is done jointly, and we can receive information from you, and we can receive the most valuable asset, if I might venture to say, would be ideas. So let's say that Alice, from a partner state or even ICAO staff, has just this amazing, brilliant idea. And this idea can help into achieving the ICAO mandate and also making aviation better. I don't know how this could be. You know, you may have, you can have a plane flying on alternative fuels. I don't know, flying on strawberries, or I have no idea what it would be, but it's a brilliant idea. So what does she do? She runs straight to her local resource mobilization focal point and explains her idea for that project. Then the local resource mobilization focal point explains to Alice that, look, you have to develop your idea. It needs to become a program. We need to show outcomes. We have to put a budget so that we can explain to potential funders of that program how the whole thing is going to run and how it will benefit aviation. Now, one point here, because I've been mixing programs with projects. Here in ICAO, we tend to work on projects. We do have some programs, but we do have the USOP, the USAP program. We have the CORSIA program and others that have very deep structures. But the distinguishing characteristic of a program is that a program has outcomes and needs to show results. And funders really like this. So the focal point, the local resource mobilization focal point, explains to Alice that we have to have outcomes and a budget, because donors really are not crazy about funding things like a small workshop or an event. They prefer to see the holistic approach. So the more that we elevate things and we group them together, a program can have multiple projects with multiple activities, for example, the better off we are. So Alice goes back to the drawing board and she works hard and she comes up with a program and also types up a proposal for it. We have to make sure that this project or program would, preferably program, would connect with the ICAO business plan to show that it's relevant to our mission, and also to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. The more we connect to the SDGs, the easier our work is as the resource mobilization specialists to connect with potential funders, because most of the funding these days from governments, from industry, from foundations, from banks, is starting to become more aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, because they figured out that these priorities that the UN established actually match with the government priorities, and this makes it far easier to achieve progress and sustain in a sustainable way. So we have to connect them. Keep this in mind. There are templates, of course, that can guide you through this process, and all of these can be accessed either through the platform or just ask your local resource mobilization focal point. So then the resource mobilization focal point takes Alice's proposal and puts it in the resource mobilization platform. And as we saw before, the resource mobilization platform has a list of all the projects, all the programs that we have available, and this is accessible and will be accessible actually starting the first quarter of 2020 directly to the potential donors. From this, you can understand that there can be coordination and collaboration between the two, the ones who are asking for money and the ones that providing money, because you can see, okay, we're still missing about $20,000 for project X, and this donor maybe has a priority that can address this. So when you can do this in real time, it's very powerful. Then the resource mobilization also, focal point asks Alice who she thinks would be the potential donor. And Alice, from her technical experience and meetings and other things, and been working in this subject for a long time, sends a list of potential donors to the resource mobilization focal point, who stores them in the platform. And I think that's it, basically. Then the information is added to the platform, and since the donors can access these directly, and the focal points can access the intelligence, this creates a cycle that helps in the coordination of how we mobilize resources. And of course, then the whole cycle begins again, since there is constant communication between the resource mobilization focal points, and then us in headquarters, we actually go on a regular basis to delegations, and we communicate these projects to them and also to other potential funders in the industry, foundations, and financial institutions. And then Alice goes back into running, and the whole cycle continues in creating new projects, feeding them to resource mobilization focal points, and all over again. This was the presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.